brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION.
The question of Ted McCarrick-type priests in the priesthood, hidden among normal priests who go about their duties and do their job on a daily basis, tends to be a sensitive one. The damage done by the McCarrick-type priests in the aftermath of the 2002 and 2003 reveal by the media of these problems and how widespread it appeared to be in the church, and the subsequent loss of trust in the church by much of the world who was already hostile to the church for its stances on moral issues, has had catastrophic consequences for the church itself. Many dioceses have gone bankrupt in the aftermath of these things. It was revealed at that time that many bishops knew very well what was going on and moved their priests around, sometimes with the help of their brother bishops, moving them to other dioceses, where they would hope these problems would go away. That has resulted in a great deal of trust lost with the laity. And it's understandable in the aftermath of all of that the bishops will take any victory they can get on that question. To be sure, the U.S. bishops and the Vatican in the years since have taken some steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. The better dioceses have barred men of a James Martin inclination from becoming priests because the data showed a near perfect correlation between McCarrick problems and James Martin inclinations, especially when we factor in the age of those harmed by those McCarrick-type priests. They were typically teenagers, meaning that this was a issue more of the James Martin inclination than it was anything else. And the better dioceses, including Portland, Oregon, and a few others, have said no to any men with that inclination entering the priesthood, entering the seminaries even. Other dioceses have not been so good about this, including in the aftermath of Francis's rather hot take about there being too many men like James Martin in the priesthood, and then him backtracking several times on that, culminating in him telling a potential young seminarian who was of like mind with James Martin to go pursue his vocation in the seminaries. A lot of other dioceses have not enforced this rule in the slightest, just hoping that these men behave themselves and act like priests. But in light of all that, the bishops will take whatever victories they can get. And one such measure they took was issuing in 2002 and 2003 a charter for protecting the most vulnerable, making sure that priests essentially do their job and not actually do evil things as priests, using their collar as a shield for themselves. And they issued a whole set of guidelines and rules about this, and it has, to a certain degree, worked. And now they're celebrating that because 21 years later, according to them, there are no credibly accused men of a McCarrick inclination in the church in America, acting as priests. If that is true, then that is a cause for celebration. That, once again, priests are at least acting like priests on that front. Let's hope their celebration isn't premature, because in the last couple of years there have been stories like this of priests who have been caught, one of them being a traditional priest, with materials they should not have or doing things they should not do with the most vulnerable, and that they are all caught up in the legal system. But at this moment, there's not a single priest who is credibly have said to have done those evil things. So we go today for our story to Info Vaticano with this headline. The bishops of the United States celebrate that no credibly accused cleric is active. The Secretariat for the Protection of the Most Vulnerable of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has published the 2023 annual report, Conclusions and Recommendations on the Application of the Charter for the Protection of the Most Vulnerable. My hope is that they're not celebrating this prematurely, that this should be a very cautious thing that they do. Yes, 20 years later, they have seemed to have taken the steps necessary to make sure this doesn't happen again, while the church refuses to take a firm stand on the normalization of sins that cry out to heaven for justice, being undertaken by the Vatican itself with the aid of many bishops, including many American bishops, These men have taken the church and twisted it to their own ends. And they celebrate this now, but I fear that they will reap the whirlwind because they reject the moral law, the infallibility of Scripture, and the infallibility of the magisterium of the church and her teachings on moral matters, including the moral matter that is the heart of the McCarrick problem. They celebrate this, and I pray that this is not premature. From the article, quote, "The report is based on an audit result conducted by Stonebridge Business Partners, a specialty consulting firm based in Rochester, New York, that provides forensic, internal, and compliance auditing services to leading organizations nationwide. Also included as part of the report is a survey conducted by the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate on the allegations of a McCarrick kind of nature and costs. This is the 21st report of its kind since 2002, with the American bishops established and adopted the Charter for the Protection of the Most Vulnerable, a comprehensive framework of procedures to address reports of McCarrick problems by Catholic clergy and establish protocols to protect the most vulnerable. The 2023 report, which covers July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, notes that 1,254 surviving people who had these things done to them filed 1,308 complaints. These represent a decrease from the 1,396 complaints reported in the previous audit year, due in part to the resolution of complaints received as a result of lawsuits, compensation programs, and bankruptcies. Allegations relating to current of the most vulnerable represent 17 reports. All other complaints were filed by adults alleging events that occurred when they were minors. The most frequent method of reporting was through a lawyer, who represented 877 or 67% of complaints, followed by self-reporting, with 313 for that number, or 23%. Other reporting methods totaled 118 reports were made by a spouse, relative, or other representative. During the audit period, dioceses and eparchies, that would be the governing structure for the Eastern Catholic Churches, provided outreach and support services to 183 survivors and their families, and continued to be provided to 1,662 survivors who had reported in previous audit periods. The report notes the ongoing work of the Catholic Church to ensure the safety of the most vulnerable, including adults. In 2023, the Church conducted 2,145,719 background checks on clergy, employees, and volunteers. Additionally, in 2023, more than 2.1 million adults and more than 2.8 million children and youth received training on how to identify the warning signs of McCarrick types and how to report those signs. For the 2023 audit year, 100% of dioceses and eparchies participated in the audit process. Stonebridge physically visited 48 dioceses/eparchies and used remote technologies to conduct an additional 17 remote visits to dioceses/eparchies for a total of 65 on-site audit visits, and collected data of another 131. Of the 65 dioceses and eparchies that participated in the on-site audits, 4 cases of non-compliance with certain aspects of the Charter were detected. Compliance with the Charter was determined based on the implementation efforts from the date of the last audit visit until 2023. On-site audits took place in the months of February to December 2023. The Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate completed data collection for the fiscal year 2023 annual survey in January 2024. All but 2 of the 196 dioceses and eparchies completed the survey, with a response rate of 99%. The results indicate that during this period, 7 accused clerics were permanently removed from ministry or retired. Of the alleged offenders, 91% had already passed away, were permanently removed from ministry, or laicized. No credibly accused cleric is active. Costs related to complaints increased by 99%. The dioceses account for 56% of expenses related to complaints. 50 dioceses and eparchies did not declare expenses related to complaints. Victim compensation represents 73% of these expenses, and attorney's fees represent 19%. End quote. Why is all that stuff at the end relevant? Because every week, it seems like, or every month, we get a story about another diocese declaring bankruptcy, or another diocese having paid X amounts of hundreds of millions of dollars because of the McCarrick problems that had been going on for decades in the church. And this is also why you see a lot of dioceses looking to find a way to get their hands on some of the prime real estate that religious orders have, so they can spin it off and sell it for the money that can then help restore their depleted coffers from this problem, or why you see parishes consolidated and many parishes, including historic parishes, sold off to be turned into restaurants and gymnasiums and other things. It's the McCarrick problem that for a decade upon decade to come is going to have a lasting effect on the church, and not a good one. So is it good news that there isn't anybody that you could credibly say is doing these things in the priesthood in America at this time? Yes, it is good news, if the reporting is accurate. And I'm glad they used an external auditor for this. I really am. Very happy for that. But they should be careful about how they celebrate this, because the fact that they have to celebrate it itself is a bad sign. But also, it's almost like that they are tempting fate here. Sooner or later, you're going to hear a case of a bishop who moved around a priest. It's going to happen at some point. I hope I'm wrong about that. I'd really, really like to be wrong about that. But until they address the underlying issue, the James Martin types in the priesthood, you're not going to see this issue resolved. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Do you disagree with me that they should remove all the James Martin types in the priesthood? Do you think this is cause for celebration? Do you think that they should be very cautious on how they celebrate this? And does it make sense the link between the property that they take from parishes and religious and that they then sell? Does it make sense why they do that now in light of this? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.